DNA evidence has long been considered the pinnacle of forensic science. In the American legal system, it is often seen as the ultimate form of proof, so precise that it can confirm guilt or innocence beyond doubt. Since its first criminal use in the 1980s, DNA profiling has revolutionized law enforcement and courtroom procedures across the United States. But beneath its sterling reputation lies a complex reality. DNA is not foolproof. When misused, misunderstood, or manipulated, it can become not a tool of justice, but a weapon of injustice. This article explores the darker side of genetic forensics, a side some refer to as the crime of DNA, the misuse, mishandling, and ethical concerns surrounding DNA evidence in the United States. The rise of DNA in criminal justice. The first criminal conviction based on DNA evidence in the U.S. occurred in 1987. Since then, the technology has evolved rapidly. The FBI's creation of the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, allowed state and federal agencies to share DNA profiles, which currently number in the tens of millions. DNA is now used to solve violent crimes like rape and murder, reopen cold cases, identify disaster victims, exonerate the wrongly convicted. However, this growing reliance also creates vulnerabilities: DNA contamination and human error. One of the key assumptions about DNA is that it is nearly infallible. In reality, human error and laboratory issues frequently compromise the integrity of DNA testing. Contamination risks. DNA samples can be contaminated during collection, storage, or analysis. Something as simple as a lab technician sneezing or touching another item can alter the sample. Sample mix-ups. Multiple DNA profiles in a single sample, known as DNA mixtures, are notoriously difficult to interpret. Analysts may unintentionally bias their conclusions based on expectations of guilt. Notable case: Josiah Sutton. In 1998, Josiah Sutton, then just 16, was wrongfully convicted of rape in Houston based on flawed DNA interpretation. A later reanalysis found the DNA didn't match Sutton at all. He was exonerated in 2003 after serving 4 years. This case illustrates how DNA can wrongly convict when labs cut corners or analysts misread results. Forensic lab misconduct. Numerous scandals have revealed deep flaws in forensic labs across the U.S. Some of the most shocking include Annie Dookhan scandal. Massachusetts Dookhan, a forensic chemist, falsified lab results in over 34,000 cases. Her misconduct led to massive case dismissals and highlighted weak oversight. Oklahoma City Police Lab. Joyce Gilchrist accused of producing misleading forensic reports. Gilchrist's actions may have contributed to multiple wrongful convictions, some resulting in death sentences. Lab workers are human. Without strong checks, even subtle biases or shortcuts can have life-altering consequences. The risk of false matches. DNA profiling relies on comparing genetic markers to known samples. While the odds of a random match are low, they are not zero, especially as databases grow. Familial searching. Law enforcement sometimes searches for partial matches, looking for relatives of suspects. While helpful in some investigations, this practice can wrongly implicate innocent people, lead to privacy violations, target communities already under police surveillance. DNA and racial disparities. The over-policing of minority communities directly influences who ends up in DNA databases. Because African Americans and Latinos are disproportionately stopped, searched, and arrested, they are overrepresented in DNA databases, even if never convicted. This creates a cycle where DNA databases reflect systemic biases. These same databases are used to solve crimes. Minorities remain targets even when innocent. Such disparity isn't just statistical. It has real-world consequences for liberty and justice. Privacy concerns. Who owns your DNA? As technology advances, the line between public and private DNA data is blurring. Several new concerns have arisen. Police access to consumer DNA. In the case of the Golden State Killer, detectives used GEDmatch, a public genealogy database, to identify the suspect through distant relatives. While the case's resolution was celebrated, it opened the door to mass surveillance via genetics. Now, police are routinely using 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, MyHeritage, to track down leads, often without user consent. Data security risks. DNA data, if leaked or hacked, can reveal sensitive information about health conditions, family relationships, ethnic background, predisposition to diseases. There are few legal protections to stop private firms or hackers from exploiting this information. Wrongful convictions. DNA's unintended victims. While DNA has freed hundreds of wrongfully convicted individuals, its misuse has also caused others to be unjustly imprisoned. Statistics: over 375 people in the U.S. have been exonerated by DNA evidence. Many have been sentenced to life or death. Example: Ricky Jackson. Convicted of murder in 1975, Jackson spent nearly 40 years in prison before DNA and witness recantations proved his innocence. His case highlights both the dangers of flawed evidence and the life-saving power of accurate DNA testing. Legal and ethical gaps. There is currently no uniform national law regulating how DNA is collected, how long it's stored, how it can be shared. Supreme Court ruling, Maryland v. King, 2013. The court ruled that police can collect DNA from people arrested but not yet convicted. Critics argue this violates the presumption of innocence and increases mass data collection without oversight. Emerging concerns: predictive genetics and DNA phenotyping. A new wave of technologies uses DNA to predict physical features, DNA phenotyping, forecast criminal behavior, genetic profiling. These methods are highly controversial, lacking peer-reviewed backing and opening doors to racial profiling, misleading genetic mugshots, ethical breaches in law enforcement. Companies like Parabon Nanolabs now offer facial reconstruction based on DNA, but critics warn of pseudoscience masked as forensics. What needs to change? To prevent the crime of DNA from continuing, reforms are essential. 1. Independent oversight. National forensic labs need to be audited by independent agencies to ensure accuracy and fairness. 2. Expungement protocols. States should have clear laws to delete DNA data from innocent people or those acquitted of crimes. 3. Consent-based DNA use. Law enforcement should require clear consent or warrants before accessing private genealogy databases. 4. Bias training. Judges, attorneys, and jurors must be educated on the limitations of DNA evidence and potential lab errors. 5. Stronger federal regulation. Congress should pass comprehensive laws to regulate forensic DNA use, secure private databases, and protect genetic rights. Conclusion: DNA should be a tool of truth, but when mishandled, it becomes a threat to justice. From lab contamination to racial bias and privacy breaches, the dangers of DNA misuse are real and growing. The science itself isn't the problem, it's how humans use it. If the United States wants to maintain a fair justice system, it must regulate DNA use with the same seriousness with which it accepts DNA evidence in court. Only then can we prevent the misuse of genetic science from becoming the next great crime of our time.